There's a katana in Japan worth $105 million. Yeah, a single sword. And the craziest part? It's made almost entirely by hand, using a process that hasn't really changed in over 1,000 years. Every swing, every spark, every hammer strike, all done with the same patience and precision as it was centuries ago. Before we dive into molten furnaces and glowing steel, here's a weird fact to warm you up. The iconic curve of a katana isn't hammered in. It appears on its own when the blade is quenched in water. Sounds impossible, right? Stick around and you'll see how. And hey, if you love discovering strange factory secrets like this, hit subscribe. We've got way weirder stuff coming up. Now let's head to Shimain, Japan, where the story begins not with steel, but with sand. Part 1. Gathering the iron sand. Imagine a smelter that's lit only once a year. It roars for just 24 hours, then sleeps for the rest of the year. That's Tatara, Japan's ancient furnace that turns ordinary Black River sand into steel strong enough to cut through armor. Here's the first surprise. Japan doesn't actually have much iron ore. Instead, they rely on something called iron sand, found in mountain streams. It's made when volcanic rock breaks down and heavy iron particles sink to the riverbed. To collect it, workers build small dams and let the lighter sand wash away. What's left behind is dark, dense, and packed with iron, about 80% pure. Drop your guess in the comments. How many kilos of this sand do you think it takes to make one katana? I'll tell you in a second. Part 2. Smelting in the tatara furnace. Once enough sand is gathered, it's mixed with charcoal in the tatara furnace. And here's the catch. The workers have to get the moisture exactly right. Too much water and steam explosions can blow the kiln apart. Too little, and the sand just flies up into the flames. They do it all by feel. No sensors, no machines, just generations of practice. Most people think this kind of smelting is automated now, but nope, it's still done by hand with shovels, buckets, and sweat. Did that surprise you? As the fire grows, teams feed in more charcoal and more sand. Oxygen bellows, once powered by foot, are now electric. But the principle hasn't changed. Inside, temperatures climb to 1,500 degrees Celsius. That's just below iron's melting point. Over the next 20 hours, impurities like sulfur and silicon melt into liquid slag that drips to the bottom, while the purest iron clumps into a spongy mass called kara. When the furnace finally cools and the smelter is broken open, they find a single 100-kilogram block of steel. But only a third of it is good enough for sword making. So to answer that question, it takes roughly 600 kilos of iron sand to make one katana's worth of usable steel. Would you ever want to work here for a day? Or would you rather admire the swords from a safe distance? Part 3. Forging the blade. Now comes the real artistry, the forging. The kara is sent to swordsmiths across Japan. There are only about 300 left, and just 30 of them make swords full-time. One of them is Akara Kakaji, a master who still forges every blade by hand in his tiny workshop. When we visited, the entire room glowed orange. You could feel the heat through your shoes. He starts by heating a block of tamagna. That's what the tatara steel is called, in a coal furnace with hand-pumped bellows. When it softens, he flattens it with rhythmic hammer strikes. In the past, this was done by 3 apprentices swinging massive hammers in sync with the master's smaller one. Today, an electric hammer helps, but most of the shaping is still done by hand. Once it's thin enough, the swordsmith folds it back on itself, hammers it flat again, and repeats up to a dozen times. Why? Because folding spreads out any remaining impurities and creates the steel's grain, which strengthens the blade in the direction it'll strike. It also forms those beautiful wavy lines you see on finished swords. Each fold doubles the number of layers. Fold it 10 times and you get over 1,000 layers. Fold it 30 times and you're into the billions. Try to wrap your head around that. Billions of paper-thin layers of steel in one blade. Would you have the patience to hammer and fold the same piece of metal 30 times? Or would you lose it halfway through? Be honest. Part 4. Creating the curve. Next, the swordsmith welds together pieces of steel with different carbon contents. High carbon steel goes on the edge, low carbon on the spine. The first stays sharp, the second flexes so it doesn't shatter. The forging turns the blade into a straight strip. But before it's sharpened, it's painted in clay. Thick clay covers the spine, thin clay the edge. Then it's heated until it glows and plunged into water. This is the most dangerous step, and also the most magical. When steel cools quickly, the carbon gets trapped, forming an ultra-hard crystal structure called martensite. But the thicker clay on the spine cools slower, letting the carbon escape. The result? The edge hardens and expands, while the spine stays soft and contracts. The tension between them bends the swords into that perfect natural curve. So yes, the katana curves itself. No hammering, just physics, chemistry, and centuries of human mastery. A third of blades crack or even shatter during this step. That's how risky it is. You get one chance, and if it fails, all that work is gone. If you had to spend weeks crafting a sword knowing it could explode at the very last moment, would you still do it? Part 5. Polishing and finishing. Once the blade survives quenching, it's reheated slightly to relax the steel. This is called tempering. It keeps the edge hard, but makes the sword less brittle. Then the sword goes to a polisher, a craftsman who can spend an entire month sharpening it by hand, using water stones that range from coarse to unbelievably fine. This is where the heimin, the edge pattern, truly comes alive. Depending on how the clay was applied, it can look like waves, clouds, or even tiny dragons. There's a sword in London with a miniature dragon and its heimin so small, no one knows how it was made. If you could design your own pattern into a blade, what would it be? Clouds, waves, or something crazy like that dragon? Part 6. The Master's Touch. Finally, the sword is finished, mounted, and ready. But to master it, you have to learn how to use it. One of the most legendary swordsmen in history was Miyamoto Musashi. He fought and won more than 60 duels and was said to be so calm in battle that snowflakes once collected on the edge of his blade without melting. So after seeing all of this, which part surprised you the most? The folding? The natural curve? The idea that it all starts with sand from a river? Drop your thoughts below and tell us, what's the one product you've always wondered how it's made? Comment your suggestion, and if we pick yours, we'll feature your name in the next video. We showed you how a Japanese katana is made, from raw sand to razor-sharp perfection. But what about the weapons of the modern age? Should we explore how bulletproof armor or fighter jet steel is made next? Let us know.